And now, without further ado, our guest of the night, our Fireside Chat speaker, Mayor Jeff Bauknight.
Good evening. Merry Christmas to everybody. Happy Hanukkah, too.
So happy holidays. Thank you for being here.
Welcome. Thank you for the invite.
Yes, I'm so excited about this because we know when I do emails, I'm like, Mayor Bauknight, but Jeff Bauknight, let's learn about you as a person and let's learn about what you've been through. You're a business owner.
Yes,
and
yes,
so,
I am.
So that's what I'm excited about, is to learn more about you and, kind of what you've been through and where you're going. And so on that note, do you have anything fun planned for the holidays?
I do have a big trip planned. My father turned 80 this year, and
Woo!
as a way to celebrate, the entire family, my parents and my 3 sisters and their families and our family are all going to Cabo next week.
Oh, that's super exciting.
Yes, so we're excited about that, to get to spend some quality time together. We have a family of 20 plus people. You don't always get to spend a lot of time together as a group, so we're really looking forward to that this next week.
That's going to be amazing. And talking about your family, can you tell me a little bit about what kind of family did you grow up in?
I grew up in a Ward and June Cleaver family. Very idyllic. Dad was a physician here in town for many years. Mom stayed with us at home until we were old enough to kind of take care of ourselves a little bit. And she went to work at Dad's office to make sure that collections were done. And then had 3 sisters. We moved here in 1972. It was just my older sister and I at that time. And Dad opened his practice, and then my other 2 sisters were born shortly thereafter. And went through all the public schools, really enjoyed going to Victoria High. I remember Dad asking me in junior high, hey, do you want to go to St. Joseph or do you want to go to Victoria High? And I was a big basketball fan, and I wasn't even 5'2" going into high school, so who knows why I chose basketball. But I always wanted to play for Mike Smith. He went to our church, First United Methodist Church, and down the street where I grew up was another ball player for Mike Smith, and so I told him, I want to go play basketball for Mike Smith, so I'm going to Victoria High. I can't imagine what Coach Smith was thinking. I couldn't touch the bottom of the net. Barely get a credit card under my feet when I jumped at that point. But I ended up growing, working hard, and played basketball for Mike and fulfilled that dream and vision that I had for my high school.
Well, I love, too, that even though you had those challenges, you kept going. You're like, this is what I want, and, I'm going to have that perseverance to do it. And that seems to be a lot that I see with you, is like you don't give up and you keep going. And, you're a business owner, so if you could tell us a little bit about your business and kind of that perseverance behind that and kind of where you started to where you are now.
Sure. Well, let me back up and talk a little bit about college.
Yes, let's do that.
Because I think I have a little bit of a story that most people don't know. The lax probably do. But I took a little while to get done with my bachelor's. I was not ready when I got out of high school. Playing basketball, I was very disciplined, and once I was done with basketball, I just kind of went wild. I started off at Austin College up in Sherman, and was there with their nephew, and your daughter, and one other person from Victoria. So there were some Victoria people up there, but it was far away from me. I guess I'm kind of a homebody. I didn't realize I was at the time, but Sherman being so far away, and I didn't do good. I majored in biology to start off with because my grandfather was a doctor, my dad was a doctor. Of course, I'm supposed to be a doctor. It's not really how my brain thinks, though. So I came home, told them I wanted to transfer. They said, well, finish out the year up there. Ended up transferring to Southwestern University in Georgetown. And I really came out of my shell there. Had a great time. My parents could see it in my grades, and they decided that I needed to come back and get a little bit of grounding. And so I went to Victoria College for the next year, which would be my junior year. I was a business major while I was at Southwestern, loved economics. But Mom said, why don't you just try to take a physics class at Victoria College? I really think you'd like it. I was like, okay, whatever. Loved it. loved everything about it. She goes, you need to be an engineer. I was like, okay, I'll try that. So that's why I ended up transferring my senior year to Texas A&M. I thought, a year and a half, I'm probably only, one semester, maybe 2 semesters behind. Oh, no. It took me another 3.5 years at A&M. So once I finally decided on a major, I was, graduated early. But I want people to know that just because, and thank goodness my parents have been very patient with me. I probably would have kicked my own kid out and said, go figure it out and then come back. But they allowed me that chance to find out what I wanted to do and study and do for the rest of my life. And I appreciate that. Got out of college, didn't find a job. I can't imagine what someone was thinking of when they saw my 6.5-year resume there, right? And like, wow. So I ended up staying and getting a master's degree in engineering. I did it in thermodynamics, which is very helpful today with what I do. I took the only job that I could find at that time, which was designing mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems for commercial buildings. So schools, churches, office buildings. And I did that for 2 years. And a good friend of mine, Lee Snedden, that I grew up with here in Victoria, was working for Intel Corporation at the time. And he said, hey, we're finally moving to Texas. I know you don't want to leave Texas. I was like, no, I don't want to leave Texas. And he said, well, we're going to be in Fort Worth, right there at Alliance Airport. You won't have to leave Texas. And I was thinking, well, but it is north of I-10, so it's kind of questionable. So I went up to Fort Worth and worked for Intel. Within 6 months, I was living in Oregon. I was like, man. At that time, I'd met my wife in San Antonio, and we got married, so she came up to Oregon, too. I'm sure that's not where her dream job was going to be, in Oregon. We did have the option when Fort Worth shut down and I could choose a place to go. I'd worked it out so I could go to Oregon, which was their fabrication facility up there and where they do all their test and development of new chips. Or I could go to Costa Rica where they assemble the chips after they're made. That was a tough decision because I really wanted to go to Costa Rica. Jalen really wanted to go to Costa Rica. But we made the tough decision together that we were going to do Oregon. Did not like Oregon because of the weather. The people aren't as friendly as they are in Texas. But through that, we made some of our best friends that we still keep in touch with today up in Oregon. 2 years up there, then we ended up in Arizona, New Mexico, back to Arizona, did Ireland for a year, back to Arizona. And so, for the guy that never wanted to leave Texas and be north of I-10, it was quite the challenge. And, I didn't like change. My wife wasn't good with change. And we learned to overcome that through that experience. We decided in about 2003, we were in Ireland. And, part of what I was doing was finding Jeff Bauknight.
That's important.
Wonderful father, but I didn't want to be Bruce's son forever. I wanted to be Jeff Bauknight and be comfortable with who I was. And I was sitting around, I remember, in Ireland and just said, well, I have a baby, have a wife. We're pregnant with the second one. I'm living in a foreign country, doing it all on our own. What else do I need to prove to myself that I can come back to Victoria and be Jeff? And so we made the decision that we wanted to raise our babies around family. My wife's family's from Fort Worth, so it was easily reachable to see them as well. So we decided to, are we going to start a business, buy a business? I didn't know anything about any of that, right? Just because I was working for somebody else. We decided we would buy a business. And so found a business for sale in Woodsboro, Texas. I called from outside of Dublin, Ireland to this business broker. And he's like, where are you? I said, outside of Dublin, Ireland. And he goes, there's not a chance in hell that you know where Woodsboro, Texas is. And I said, I guarantee you I know where it is. It's just right south of Refugio. He goes, oh my gosh, okay. So it took about a year to put the whole deal together. By that time we'd moved back to Arizona, had another baby, and decided we finally moved over here. My wife was a saint. Intel had this program, and still does, where they have a sabbatical that they give you. So once every 7 years, they give you 2 months off that you could also couple with your vacation. And it's with pay. You got to leave your laptop, got to leave your cell phone. You don't do any work. You just go recharge and learn something new. Well, my learning something new was how to run a business and still get a paycheck from them while I was doing it. But Jalen came early, started working on the house, getting all that set up. I came and started the business. Then I had to go fly back to finish up there and tell them that I would quit. They already knew I'd shared that with my boss. But have a mechanical contracting business down here now after managing all that mechanical construction for Intel over the years. So all my experience led up to coming back here.
Well, and I think what I keep hearing through your story is that perseverance. Even though it took you a while for school, it's still, you kept going, you didn't give up, and you persevered. And even though you didn't want to leave Texas, you and your wife persevered through all of that. So it's you kept going. And, I can't imagine how that guy felt when you called from Ireland. He's like, is this real? Is this really happening? That's an odd one. But, it's so interesting to me that you took a class at Victoria College that forever changed your life.
Yes.
Right here in our community. And I think that shows a powerful message too, is that your mom had great advice, but also that, we do provide things here at, our college and our university that can forever change somebody's life just by taking that one class. And now here you are, and you have a company doing that. And you got all of, the knowledge over the years to really decide that. And I think also being a business owner, you have to have perseverance. And so going through all of that also, helped prepare you for that.
Yeah, sometimes it was no choice. I remember we, bought the business, and you're thinking, how do you ever buy a business? And it's pretty much we'd saved for 7 years and sold everything and put it into a loan. And Jalen and I didn't sleep for many a nights just wondering, okay, how are we going to pay for this? How are we going to pay for that? I hope someone pays us so we can pay payroll. And everybody always thinks, the impression I get, that if you're a business owner, it's just easy and everything's just, magical unicorns and rainbows.
Yes.
It's not. It's work. Yeah. It is a lot of work, and it's a lot of stress that a lot of people don't see.
And that's very true. A lot of times as my parents growing up, they owned a business, and everybody would be like, man, you're so lucky. Y'all are so rich because your parents own a business. I was like, no, I never get to go on vacation. My parents are stressed out. I do not go near my dad when he's paying payroll or taxes, But it's one of those things, it's the stories we tell ourselves that, if you're a business owner, but they don't see all the work that you're putting in constantly. Like, if you call your boss, you're like, hey, can I have off, and then you put the phone in the other hand. No, you can't, So it's a lot of that. And it takes a long time to build it up, and it can be a very rocky road and a very stressful, like you said, sleepless nights. It's amazing and it's worth it when you do it, but it's a lot to go through it. So whenever I tell people, they're like, "Oh, you have it easy. You own your own business."
Right.
When I hear that, I'm like, "No, they don't. That's not how it works."
It doesn't work like that. I wish it did.
Right? That'd be great.
Yeah.
So what are some roadblocks as being a business owner that maybe you've helped something that was kind of a failure, but you've learned something from?
When I had first started out in San Antonio as a design engineer, I had designed a school in New Braunfels. I was so proud of myself. I'd gotten the whole mechanical system, everything. It had gone out to bid. Contractor was out there and received a call that week and said, hey, we don't know what to do. None of this fits in the space that we have. And I was like, man. So I went to my boss and I told him the issues they were having, and he goes, well, it's Friday. You got all weekend to fix it. If you don't have a job on Monday. I was like, oh, God.
No stress at all right there.
None at all. So, again, the perseverance, I guess. But I went out there, I measured everything. I redesigned everything all weekend. I think I stayed up, every night. Got everything printed out, ready for him to do on Monday. And thank goodness it worked out. But it really taught me just responsibility, attention to detail. You have to get it right, and if it's your fault, go fix it. And it serves me well as a business owner. Sometimes you don't have the luxury of time to make the correct decision every time, but you make the best decision with the information that you have. And you might get down a month or two down the road, and you might need a little course correction, and it's okay. That is okay to make a mistake if you can go back and go fix it and make it better.
Well, and failure, right? I always say it's not really failure because you implement what you learned from that, and then you're able to move forward. And it's taking ownership, and I think that's such an important key as a business owner is that you take all of your roads that have led you to here, and then you implement all of that into what you do now, and then also your employees learn from that. The people in the community can learn from that. And with your story of your journey through school, and I love how you said finding yourself, because I think that is important to kind of find out what do you like, what do you want to do, and kind of really having that reflective moment, because a lot of people, you don't hear them talk about that, but I think that's such a key piece that is once you start digging into that and figuring out what it is you want and finding yourself, it really leads you to where you need to go. And then to that moment, something that I really, really resonated with me with that you said was, not being in your dad's shadow, like being your own person. I think a lot of times when you've had parents who've done big things, it can be really hard. My uncle was an original member of ZZ Top. My dad had the first music video on country music station. And people are like, you do music? What? I'm like, it took me a long time because that's crazy. Like, how can I? And they didn't make me feel that way, which I'm sure your dad didn't make you feel that way.
He didn't.
But as a kid,
you put it on yourself.
You put it on yourself, and so to reach that moment where you're like, I can do this, I think that's such a powerful message for so many kids out there, that you have your own walk, you don't live in someone's shadow, and you do your thing your own way, and you very much have blazed your own path.
Yes. I've enjoyed doing that. I still do it with advice from my parents because I bounce ideas off of them, which is nice. I don't always listen, but I still bounce stuff off of them now, so.
Well, yeah, and that's my daddy. He gives me unsolicited advice and solicit, so either way. But I appreciate that he does, so. But when we're talking about failures, what about success? Like, how would you define success?
It's always interesting. You kind of sent me that question before, and to me, it's a work-life balance for me that makes me feel successful. I love spending time with my family. I love doing my work, and I love my community service, but I have to be very careful because I will tend to let one of those things overtake the other two, and I get cranky, I think, when that happens. My wife's nodding. Yeah, that's not the only reason. But for me, successful is that work-life balance. I have to make sure that I work so that help pay for stuff at the house, and give me the free time to do the political stuff that I like to do. And then, I love spending time with my kids. Absolutely love it. And I even in meetings, I was like, I gotta step out. I'm gonna take the phone call from my daughters, because that's probably, very, very important to me. And it takes the place over marrying or work. So I put that at the top and then balance out the work and marrying stuff. But that's, to me, successful, trying to balance all that. And if I get it right, then I'm kind of blissful. If I don't, then I've got to dial stuff back on one end or the other.
Well, and I think that's something all of us are always trying to figure out is juggling, right? We're always trying to figure that out and keep it in balance. And I think it's just being mindful about it. And, I love that you said take the call from your daughter. Like, your kids and your family come first, because I believe that that's how we are successful, when we make sure to put the right priorities first. And, I think that it's constantly finding that balance, and you get in that groove, then life throws things at you, and then you have to figure out how to maneuver that. But it's just that mindfulness, and that you have that in the forefront to think about that. That is so important, because you'll burn out so quick if you don't, or you'll be cranky, right?
Yes, or I'll be cranky. We don't want that on the dais.
No, it's never going to be cranky, right? So talking about failures and success, when we talk about success, what do you think like your biggest success has been?
Professionally, I think, it's figuring out how to run my own business. Dad, as a physician, while he had a business, that wasn't his focus. His focus has always been on treating people. So figuring out and navigating that, the guy that I bought the business from was supposed to help me with some of that and ended up not. So, I had to figure out through fines, you missed the payroll tax deadline, you need to send that in. And so, I mean, I created this whole cheat sheet that I'd have to look through every week and check off to make sure I got everything paid that needed to be paid and monthly. So that's been very successful. During my Intel career, something that I was very proud of and felt very successful with was when I took a job in Arizona, I took it as the mechanical lead for a new fab facility, Fab 22. And prior to that time, they'd had 5 people do that job. So they split it up by each building, and everybody had their own responsibilities in each building. Well, they decided to try and save some money. They would do it with one person. And I was the bright one that said, I'll do it. So it was $100 million that I had to manage to get constructed within a 12-month period. And my partner and I from the general contracting firm, Ed, we're great friends. We still talk 2 to 3 times a week. But they came to us and said, oh, well, the architectural lead, he's not doing well on the ceilings. Why don't y'all take over the ceilings for the fab? We don't know anything about ceilings, right? And so we took over the ceilings. Through it, though, we got to develop you probably see them now, the flexible hoses for fire sprinklers. It's a braided hose. We got that UL listed for the first time ever so that we could move it around. Before that, it was all just hard piped in there, so that was a fun process. We finished our job early. I was in charge of the startup of the entire factory, ran those meetings. We were done. We were shooting pool by noon every day, loving it. Like, this is great job now. You know, the stress is gone. And they came back to me and said, hey, instrumentation and controls, they're not doing well. Can you go help them out? I know you have time. And the tongue lashing I got from Ed when I said, hey, guess what I signed us up to go do? So we went and got them sorted out, and theirs was easy. We don't know anything about INC either, just a little bit. It was more of a communication issue. But through that year, we ended up managing about $140 million worth of work together.
Wow.
Got the factory up and running on time. Did the job that 5 people were doing before. And it was just, it was tough because it came up for, review at the end of the year. What were your accomplishments? I was like, I got a lot. Let's put this down. And they said, oh, you did a very good job. We appreciate it. We don't have any money for raises, and we're not doing any grade bumps this year. Thank you, though. So it's a really, really tough pill to swallow. I think that's why they let me create my next job in New Mexico and said, okay, you can just go do startup over there. I convinced the project manager over there to let me do that. But and probably why we got Ireland too, just as a thank you. But that was pretty self-satisfying up until the point where there was no recognition for it.
But still, you were figuring out things as you went. You're like, okay, let's figure it out. And that's really awesome because you just rolled with it and you did it. And you not only did it, you excelled. So that's really
it was
something.
Fun. It was fun. It's really exhilarating to be in charge of that much money and probably 2,400 men on the site working for the mechanical trades at that time and just making sure it all clicked and went together. It's really fun and fast-paced and stressful and probably really accelerated my gray hair. But
if you play pool, they're going to give you more work. So, don't post those photos,
Well, it's before posting photos.
So people just knew. They're like, he's a pool shark. They played you at the Christmas party. They're like, what's going on? But I think with talking about all your successes, what about your personal life? What do you deem as your biggest success?
Having a wonderful family. Marrying a wonderful wife. Having 2 beautiful babies. I keep telling my wife they're in finals right now. The oldest goes to University of Arkansas, and the other younger one's at University of Oklahoma. Why they wouldn't go to A&M, I still haven't figured out, but I did something wrong. But they call me and tell me their grades and what they're doing, and they're very communicative with me. And I was thinking, man, my parents had to tell me, okay, it's Sundays at 1 o'clock, we're talking. But they call all the time or text, and they're just wonderful, and my wife did a great job with them.
That's so wonderful. And if you had someone that was buying a business today, talking about success, since we are, what would be a piece of advice that you would give to them when they were going to buy the business?
As a piece of advice, a friend of mine has the largest moving company in College Station. And so I called him when I was doing it. I said, Philip, and he's a Yoakum boy. He was Aggie graduate too. And I said, Philip, I'm thinking about doing this. Am I crazy? Got any words of advice? And he said, cash is king. He said, just make sure you always have enough cash to cover everything. He goes, it's no fun going to the bank. It's no fun going to ask for a loan, repaying a loan. If you can do it cash, cash is king. And so I would say leverage when it's smart to leverage, and if not, try to work off of all cash if you can.
That's great advice. And if someone was graduating college today, what piece of advice would you give them?
Get your master's from A&M. Don't be too proud to take that first job. You need the experience. It doesn't mean that's going to be your lifelong job, but go get the experience, knock it out of the ballpark. Be successful at whatever job that you end up taking, even if it's not your dream job. You're probably not going to get your dream job. You need to build up your resume, build up your experience, make yourself marketable. A college degree just doesn't make you marketable just because you have the college degree. It means you persevered through college. And just, if you're getting out of college and doing that, that's fine. Take that job. And it's the same if you decide not to go to college. I have a guy that works for me. I'd say he's number 2 guy in the company, smart as a whip, never graduated high school, grew up in the valley. And I get to teach him stuff new every day, and he just soaks it up like a sponge. But he's never said, no, I don't want to learn that. I don't want to do that. He's always been there and say, hey, what else can I do to help? What else can I do to, learn something else? And so it doesn't matter if college degree, no high school degree. If you have the desire and will, and Victoria is a perfect place to do it, everybody in the community is going to help you if you step forward and make the effort. If you don't make the effort, no one's going to drag you along. You're like, he doesn't want to do it. He doesn't want to be successful, or doesn't want to put forth the effort to do what needs to be done to get to where you can have that marketability and the skills. So, but Victoria, I have found, if you're willing to step out there and say, hey, teach me something, let me help you so that I can be better, Victoria is there with their arms open. And that's across the board. I don't care what industry we're in. There's always someone there that's willing to mentor you or be a sounding board or listen to you and give you guidance. And it's a fantastic place to try and innovate and be an entrepreneur.
True. And, people here, we're not only one of the most giving cities, financially, but also with people's time for mentoring and all of those things. And I think that point is so, so important. You never know what doors were open. If you take a job, even if it isn't your dream job or where you thought you wanted to be, what connections you'll make there, where it will lead you. And also, I think it's just, what sets people apart too. Be willing to learn, be open to learn. Never think you're too good for something. One of my first jobs was working for my dad. If you work for your family and my mom, you do everything. And so I learned really quickly, if something needed to be done, I did it. I couldn't say, that's not in my job description. I just did it. And that's what, during my career, has really set me apart. And like you said, that guy's willing to learn. He soaks it up. He's like, let's do it. And so I think that is an important point, because if you put in extra effort just like that and just are willing to do things, people here in Victoria, especially business owners, will be like, wow, this is amazing. I'm going to help you. I want to retain this employee. Yeah. So I think that's a really great point that can really help people. And speaking about jobs, what was your first job?
Well, my first job that I can really remember was about 12. And Mom and Dad had a riding John Deere, a little lawn tractor. And we lived in the country club area, but there were very few houses back then. I can remember at Jay Lack's house in Woodway, right? We could stand up on Mom and Dad's second floor and wave to them and see them, because there were no trees and it's just all cornfields, and there was the Lack family waving back. But there was nothing around us. And so Mom and Dad let me know who the owners of the lots were. And they were the Duseks, the Hudsons, and I had the Wyckoffs, and I think I had one other one I can't remember. And I called and asked if I could mow their lots, because they had to maintain them. They're like, yeah, sure, sir. So I think I charged $8 for a lot, so a quarter to a third of an acre. And I remember when I finally went up in price, I was just like fretting. I had to write him a letter. I'm sorry, fuel prices have gone up a nickel.
Inflation. And you're 12. I love this.
Yeah. So that was the first one, and I kind of did it myself, help and guidance from my parents. When I was 15, I got a job at the new hospital in town, Victoria Regional Medical Center, which is now DTAR North, and I was the assistant to the assistant groundskeeper. And I think the first week I was on the job, I was mowing on this hill and it was wet. If you ever mowed on a hill, it can be tricky, but you're 15, you got enough testosterone, it doesn't matter, just go. And I just started sliding down that hill, and the tractor it was just a big long tractor, but the deck and the front wheel, right between it was lodged a telephone pole. I couldn't go anywhere. And it was too heavy to move up the hill, but they kept me anyway. I got the crummy jobs, go hit the mosquito-infested area and go weed eat. And I remember dropping everything one time, and I swear it's just a cloud around me, and I was just running, and I noticed I was in front of the cafeteria. I must have looked crazy. But I worked there all summer. That was probably my first real job, working for somebody else.
I always wonder if your parents, they make those phone calls like, hey, make him go to the mosquito-infested area so he goes to college. He realizes he needs a good job,
Well, I will tell a story on myself. Dad, when we were growing up, he always liked to take us with him when he'd do rounds at the hospital, which is always a treat for us because we'd go sit at the nurse's station and we'd get free ice cream and whatever. We got older, he'd leave us in the doctor's lounge, and there was always a snack or two in there. And so I just thought that was a part of the deal. You got to go to the doctor's lounge. So I'd finish up work and waiting for Mom to come pick me up. And she'd have to, come in and look for me. I was always in the doctor's lounge, and they had to tell me, you can't go into the doctor's lounge to hang out after being the assistant to the assistant groundskeeper. That's not for you anymore. So
you don't have the VIP access now.
No.
It's been revoked. So speaking about people who are, influential in your life and who've really impacted you, who would you consider, your greatest mentor?
Greatest mentor, from a private side, of course, I would have to say my parents. They've set a great example in everything that they've done, whether it's marriage or being a good steward in the community, teaching you about service to others. They've been phenomenal. I had a great role model to be a father. I knew how I should act towards my kids. That was very, very beneficial to keep the drama down in life. Professionally, I'd probably have to say, I don't know if it's mentor or just Greg Johnston, a fellow in Oregon. He was in charge of all the mechanical construction for a big firm called Hoffman Construction, still is. And Ed McGee, who was the guy that I worked alongside of in Arizona. But when we first got to Oregon, Jalen and I knew nobody. And we knew one guy that, we didn't have any money, so I had a roommate when we first went up there for the first 6 months before we were married. Then we were married, she moved up there. Well, we had to finish the year lease, so we had a roommate our first 6 months, and Scott Grunke was this big guy that played football in Minnesota, and he had been in Fort Worth as well. But that's the only person we knew in Oregon. So we ended up meeting through work Ed, who was originally an English major, and then went back to school and got his structural engineering degree. He's just really, really smart guy. And we would sit around, and him and another guy, Mike Eddy, who was, I think he was Mensa or above, and they'd just be sketching out stuff and plans on napkins and talking about things that I'd never even thought about doing, like, you got to put a new valve in this hot water line. Well, let's get some cryo material and get some liquid nitrogen and freeze the pipe and create a plug in it. And, it's just the creative nature that's sitting around them all the time. And also learning that when it's time to work, it's time to work. When it's time to have fun, it's time to have fun. And they were good at balancing that out and kind of bringing me along, which is very strange, I think, in the Intel world, that I didn't have an Intel mentor. My mentors were on the general contractor side. And such a good job of becoming friends and understanding how we all work together that when we went to New Mexico, Jalen continued to work in Phoenix or in Chandler, Arizona. because it was just going to be a temporary assignment. And Greg, being from Oregon, he was there too. And Intel approved for us to rent an apartment and share it together. So Jalen would come over on the weekends or I'd fly home. But I stayed with the general contractor, which is really unheard of in that corporate world that is kind of like the enemy. You shouldn't be with them at all. But those two gentlemen from Oregon, still good friends with, and probably professionally who I'd consider more mentors than anybody.
And I love that it was unexpected. It's not generally the mentor that in your industry you would have. And that's, what I really try to let people know is you never know who will be a mentor for you. Never close a door just because it's not in your same industry or somebody who maybe hasn't been looked at as a mentor. Everyone has something to offer, and you never know the one person that you will end up great friends with till this day that really helped you along.
Right, yeah, and I have a hard time asking for help. So it's hard for me to develop a mentor relationship because I don't know, it's in my personality just not to ask for help, just go do it type of thing. And it's probably wrong. It'd probably be a lot easier if I had a mentor on a lot of stuff instead of just deciding I'll be bullheaded and figure it out myself. But
No, I totally understand that, and it is, and that's one of the things I'm like, hey, it's like the map, where it's like turn left, crash ahead, turn right. That's kind of how I compare mentorship. It can help you be like a map and guiding you, and I think that's what's great is we do have a community full of people who I see a lot of you in the crowd who've sat and mentored people, and it's been really awesome to see them not to hit those roadblocks, because it is hard to ask for help. It is. So that's what's great when, like Innovation Collective, you can come here and say, hey, I'm working on the same. People like, hey, I can help you. That's much easier than just randomly walking around.
This is a great forum and deal that y'all are doing for entrepreneurship here in Victoria and just businesses in Victoria.
Well, and speaking about businesses in Victoria and entrepreneurship, really, where would you like to see the city within the next few years grow? Like, what would you like to see happen? And with, innovation, entrepreneurship, and kind of where our city's going?
Well, I think there's some great new industries that are out there that have been, considering Victoria. So industries that don't even exist in the U.S. right now. And I don't know how much I can say on them or not, but, everybody involved with VEDC always gets excited about stuff. It takes forever. But there's some new industries that are really close, hopefully, in the next year that we'll be able to announce that create a whole new industry, and they're going to be here in Victoria, Texas. Lately, I was extremely excited. Caterpillar had a vendor summit here in Victoria. They've never had a vendor summit in Victoria before. It was kind of like being in sorority rush, though. It was a Monday night at an event, Tuesday night 2 events, Wednesday night with another group that is moving down. But they had over 200 vendors here in town from all over the world. I met someone from Finland, Indonesia, China, Japan, all over the U.S. And I think there's a real big push from Caterpillar, and this is not because I talked to Caterpillar, so don't put this in the paper, but talking with some of the vendors, they felt like, they should be located in Texas, and that it was important to Caterpillar that they be down here. So hopefully, I'm, anticipating more businesses that supply Caterpillar to be located here, and it's going to be a very good business retention expansion type of projects for Jonas to be chasing after. I saw him earlier. I don't know if he's still here. There he is. But VEDC is doing a wonderful job. I think as a community, we need to focus on workforce education. I think that we need to get, and I'm not trying to knock anybody, please don't take it that way, but I think we need to get our level of excellence in our public schools up to a higher standard. I think we deserve more. I think the kids deserve better education. It's just not an easy proposition. I think a lot of it has to do with parental involvement, and then how do you engage the parents to be willing to sit with their kids to do the homework, make sure the homework's done. And I know it's difficult. I'm not saying that, but I think workforce education, the Mid-Coast Construction Academy is doing great things with some of the trades. Victoria College has some very good programs and unique programs. And the fact that I think some of these vendors were very, very taken aback and surprised to learn that if you need a training, some type of training program for your company, let us work with you and tailor make it for your company. And I think that I don't know if that's unique or not, but I think that's just a phenomenal resource that Victoria has that the vendors were floored by. But workforce education, Caterpillar suppliers, some new industries to the U.S., I think are all in our future.
No, I agree. And, VEDC is doing a fantastic job. Hi, Jonas. But, there's so many great companies. I feel there's so many people looking at Victoria right now because I get random calls and messages like, hey, I'm interested in this place. Tell me more. And we have a port. We have an airport. And what sets our airport apart is that, it used to be a base. So there's all these different things like NASA, I think. Don't quote me on this or put it in the paper either. But I believe we were number 9 that NASA was looking at. And so there's so many interesting things about our community. It's rich in history. And we're just a really special place to be in. And so I would love to see more vendors come in. I think that's a fantastic thing for us to be focusing on as well. And, as we grow, it'll be wonderful to see, jobs increase and all of those things.
Yeah, it was very encouraging. Jalen and I were asked to go to supper with a company from Illinois that's planning to expand down here. And they were like, man, we searched all over Texas. We went to Round Rock. And they're from a small town in Illinois of about 1,500 people. But they supply parts to Caterpillar. And they said, we went to Austin, Round Rock, Houston, San Antonio, Dallas, Fort Worth. We looked everywhere and just nothing felt right. Didn't remind us of being back home. So we came to Victoria because Diego at Caterpillar had said, hey, let me have Jonas give you a call. Let him introduce Victoria to you. Well, hats off to Jonas. He did a great job with them. They fell in love with the place. We had supper Wednesday night. That evening, they called me at home on my cell phone. Said, hey, we're trying to plan our next trip back down. We want to bring the wife and our kids, and we want them to see everything that we see. He goes, I don't know how y'all have kept this place such a secret. Y'all are ready to pop. That's how we see it. And
that's how I feel.
Yes. I know we've been saying that for 10 years, but, I mean, I really feel like we're there. We're starting to get noticed. I mean, these guys had no reason to choose Victoria except for they loved it. They found the people welcoming. Everybody willing to help them, whatever they needed to get done. VDC does a great job doing that. We can help you with that. We can hook you up with that people. Y'all do the exact same thing on a smaller scale. We can hook you up with. We know that somebody does that.
And that's so unique. That is not normal, guys. And I love that our community is not normal in that way because, it's all the events that I go to, everywhere from the vendors, the people throwing the events, even during the film festival, all the people, they go to film festivals all over the world. They're like, everyone was so friendly and so nice. And that's, not normal for people to usually be so friendly and nice and connecting and offering help. And that's really, when I think about our community, our identity as a community, I feel that we're a friendly and welcoming and very giving community. And it's so wonderful to see different entities all coming together and helping each other and to welcome people. And it's serious when they say, let's bring the kids and wife to come look at the place. That's always a good sign.
Well, they're committed to being down here, so
that's awesome.
Hopefully they'll announce something in the spring, but really excited to have that supplier coming down that I really didn't anticipate happening. So
that's fantastic. And so now is the time of the chat where we get to have a few questions. So I'm going to give the microphone to you. So just raise your hand and introduce yourself, please.
Y'all in the front row, keep quiet. No questions.
Anyone have a question?
If there's one thing that you could put your finger on that might be holding Victoria back that could be addressed right away, what would that be?
Could you repeat that one more time? One thing I could change in Victoria
One
right
thing
now?
that you feel is holding Victoria back from popping. So we've been talking about it for 10, 12 years. What would that be?
I think that, and this is very hard to change. You know, if I could snap my fingers, real estate values holds us back. Some of the wages that are paid in Victoria, while, you know, in my mind, that are good, but, you know, to qualify for that loan for the house where we want people to, you know, have home ownership, I think that we are overpriced as a market. I think it's a function of supply and demand, though. I mean, they're selling. So the market's bearing it right now, but I think it's excluding so many people from home ownership and putting down roots and creating that home lifestyle that, frankly, I enjoy. But I think that if I could snap my fingers, I would, you know, have a whole nother level of housing. And it's not anybody's fault. It's inflation. It's, you know, construction costs, not just from inflation, but labor shortages, material shortages. I think it holds us back and stops people from moving here. Because you can look at, I mean, some of the other surrounding bigger communities, they might have better housing prices than we do, which is crazy that it might be cheaper in Katy to buy a house than it is here in Victoria. And it hadn't always been that way. So, thank you for that. Come on, I really tell you what's on the top of my mind when there's a question, so.
Thanks. Hey, Jeff.
Hi, Hunter.
Hey, listen, I think you've got a reputation for being a great leader of teams, both within your business as well as within the city, and obviously thanks for coming out and speaking tonight. You know, as you think about leading teams and cultivating people within those teams, I think sometimes it can seem like there's two mentalities. There's an owner mentality and an employee mentality. And sometimes that employee mentality is like, how can I do the least and get paid the most, right? Sometimes that owner mentality is like, what are we capable of? You know, what's the, you know, how can we be world class at whatever we're good at? How do you think about cultivating that within a team? How do you think about, you know, working with team members and getting them to think more about what they're capable of than what's the least they can do to get paid?
Well, when I approach teams, whether it's on the city level or in my professional life, right? Number one thing that I try to do is everybody comes to the table with their own unique set of skills. They should be respected for those skills. Just because you have this job doesn't mean that you're any less of a person than the person that's at the top of the heap, right? It's just trying to, and I think I took this from basketball. As the point guard, I had to, you know, get everything lined up on the floor. I didn't want the 6'7" guy dribbling the ball down because he's going to get it swiped away. You know, everybody has their roles and responsibilities, making sure that they know them, that they're respected for them. It goes, you know, when Dr. Young and I got on council, I remember they were yelling across the dais at each other. I remember Mom and Dad, before I got sworn in, leaned over and they're like, "Hey, you sure you want to do this?" And I was like, "Yeah, I think it's a little late now." But I think that with Dr. Young's help, we've brought a level of decorum and worked hard at, you know, changing that culture to where now you see us up there and it seems easy. The conversations are easy because, you know, we've worked on teamwork and respect and decorum, and I do the same thing at work. You know, I tell the guys that, you know, I ask their opinion. What do you think? What do you think we should do? Have you thought about this? Bring everybody in so that they feel like they're contributing. And if someone feels like they're contributing, I think that that makes them motivated to do even more. I'm not a super loud leader either at work, and I don't yell. I don't do any of that because I think you lose the respect. You know, you're showing disrespect to those people. And what I've found with the guys in construction, they just want that respect. They want people to recognize what they're doing is a trade and a craft, and that they have pride and ownership in what they're doing. You start recognizing that. I mean, that's how I treat everybody at the company. Not everybody sticks around at my company because they don't fall in line with that philosophy. And it's accountability too. I'm gonna hold you to account for something. I tell them, you know, making mistakes is okay. let's just try not to repeat the same mistake. Let's learn from them. I mean, it's easy things that most of us grew up learning, but some people have not had the opportunity to learn those same lessons. If we can teach that to other people, I think it brings the whole team better together and lifts everybody up to accomplish more than what they thought they could accomplish. Hope that answers it enough.
Yes, my name's Joe Daly. My question is, I know we had a big thing with the COVID, and it kind of shut down Boot Fest and a lot of festivities. I hear from a lot of people they would like to see more festivities or something going on for entertainment through whether Parks Recreation or the Victoria, area.
Yes, sir. So we have a plan to come back with a festival. Because we are getting ready to celebrate our bicentennial in 2024, we've chosen to focus our efforts over this next year instead of doing something in October and then trying to shoehorn in a bunch of stuff for bicentennial. We already started working on the bicentennial celebration. So April 13th, 2024, we'll have a dedication ceremony in De Leon Plaza of the new statues. We're going to try to have some type of gala or ball or event on the square that night too. We'll have dignitaries come in for it, the governor and state rep and state senators, of course, and other prominent people that have been in Victoria. I'd like to get them back. I mean, I have a vision, and I'll be putting together a committee to get that April 13th going. But in conjunction with that, every couple of months we want to celebrate something in Victoria's history, whether it's a ranching or oil and gas or, our multicultural melting pot that Victoria is the prime example of how to live. We've had a great history, and all of it deserves to be highlighted over 200 years. And we see a festival happening in the fall again in October. It won't be the Boot Fest. We're working on rebranding it, something so that we can continue it every year, whether it's some type of heritage festival recognizing the mixing of Hispanic and Anglos in Victoria from day one that have always been side by side to accomplish great things for our community. And that's kind of the vision that we have it right now. Not any more detail behind it than that, but the city already has a committee that's been meeting and working on some of those details and what it's going to look like. And council's going to have input on it, as well as we'll set up some citizen community or committee to help us with some of the other aspects of the planning.
You mentioned that you define success as a balance in your personal life, your business life, and your public service. Any tips or guidance you could share with us on how you go about achieving that balance that you seek?
For me, it's a feel. I can look at my calendar sometimes and I start getting frustrated. You get too busy with everything. I don't have time to breathe. I don't have time to just sit down. It's nice to sit down and watch my Texas Aggies play football. I don't always get that opportunity, or I play on this NFL football pool. I don't even know if I made my bets this past week, but I just like to catch a little bit of a football game, or I'd like to get out and hunt a little bit. And so when I get too bound up with everything, I have to make some decisions on what's priority and what's not. I can't go read a proclamation at every event. It's just, to me, it waters down proclamations, but I just can't be at every event. Gary Moses is a great example of how to hit every event, but I try to emulate him, but I don't have his energy, I don't think. But it's just a lot. Like tonight, besides this, there's two other things that we got asked to go to, and I've let them both know that this is first priority, and I'll try.
Thanks for being here.
Yes, and I'll try to get to those other events if we're able to, but may not be able to. And even if it's tight, I might decide, hey, you know what? It's more important. I'm gonna go sit with Jaylyn. She can have a glass of wine. I'll have a beer, and we're just gonna visit and catch up, because while we might pass each other during the day, you know how it goes. You don't always get a meaningful conversation. It's like, hey, did you order the groceries? Did you get this? It's just day-to-day stuff. But it's nice when you just get to visit with your spouse and talk about this and that and nothing in particular. So Hope that answered it, Bryce.
That's great advice. And, I do love, too, about the celebrating the history of Victoria. We have such rich history. And, I love when people tell me the stories. I remember the other night at the Frostbank Christmas party, a group of us were chatting, and they were telling us about different things that existed in Victoria. There used to be a casino in the country club, and then the Cactus Club. And then
know anything about
all of these, I was like, what at the country club? They're like, it was a round room. But something really cool that I learned was that something really cool that I learned was that the founder of HEB, he, had his one location. He had this dream and this vision as an entrepreneur to grow this. And, he went and pitched it to all these banks, was trying to get funding, got turned down by everybody. The one city with the one bank that actually helped him and believed in him was Victoria Bank and Trust right here in Victoria. So welcome everybody who loves HEB. It started, with our community believing in his vision and his dream. And so you uncover all of these amazing things of our history, and it shows a pattern of people here in the community and the things they did. So I think that's really cool,
Intercoastal Canal System.
Yeah.
That was started here in Victoria.
There's so many things. There's so many things that are started here.
Well, my wife always calls it, if you're from Victoria or know someone, it's like a cult. You can't go anywhere where someone doesn't have a connection back to Victoria, which is just amazing.
I was in Paris and ran into somebody from Victoria, and I'm like, what? Every travel, I'm in the airport in a weird terminal that I don't even think anyone will be in, and I ran into Lucina with peaches and tortilla. It was a random day. I was in a foreign, going in a different place. I even switched terminals, and there was barely anyone in this terminal, and I look, and she looked at me. I was like, what are you doing here? So, it's everywhere you go. My brother was at a random ATM on the side of a road in a different city, and the other person in front of him turned around. They were from Victoria. So we're everywhere, guys. We're getting everywhere.
Yeah, but you got to be nice to everybody.
It's so true. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I know I personally took away so much from this in your journey. It's really inspiring, that word perseverance, because you really didn't have, the college experience that a lot of people do, and you found yourself along the way. And then even with your job and the things you did, it was being innovative and saying yes and figuring things out. And that's so awesome, because it shows this pattern of perseverance. Even you and your wife and your family, leaving Texas and going to all these places, and then figuring out what it was you guys wanted to do in the long run with bringing your family back to Victoria. And thank you for coming back here, because I love those stories. I also came back, and to raise your family, it is a great place to raise a family. And thanks for all that you do, and I appreciate you. And it's so wonderful that you're a business owner and that you have the insight to have an employee like you told us about, to give them opportunity to grow. I think that's really fantastic.
Yeah, you bet. I really appreciate you having me and hosting this event, regularly. I do have to also thank my wife, who came to listen tonight and, make sure that I wasn't telling a fib. And I want to thank Lori Burris sitting next to her. Her and Byron Burris are great friends. They support me in what I do. They let me vent when I need to vent too, keep me grounded. And Dr. Young, who's just been a pleasure serving on council with him since day one. We went and did TML training together when we first started. We were the only two elected that year. So it's been nice doing this journey with Dr. Young, and I really appreciate his friendship and candor. And so thank you. And it's good to see so many friendly faces. It's pretty intimidating. We got the Murphys sitting in here, the Lacks sitting in here, just great people in this community, and you see it everywhere you go. So thank y'all for being y'all too.
And thank you. If we could all give a big round of applause, I appreciate you.